Welcome to Treasure Mint Lab. This iconic Washington Bicentennial Quarter may look ordinary, but one small detail can make collectors see it in a completely different way. First coin. Among the hundreds of millions of quarters produced in Denver in 1981, one particular coin can still surprise collectors, not because every example is rare, but because condition can completely transform its importance. The 1981 D Washington Quarter is a familiar-looking piece of everyday American coinage, bearing George Washington's portrait on one side and the traditional heraldic eagle on the other. Yet the difference between an ordinary circulated example and an exceptional survivor can be dramatic. This is the kind of coin that demands a closer look at the surface, the strike, the luster, the mint mark, and even the smallest signs of contact damage. Later, we'll examine what authenticated examples have actually sold for and why the grading of a coin can make such a remarkable difference in collector demand. But the real story begins with a simple question. How can a quarter made in enormous numbers still become a serious collectible? The answer lies in survival, preservation, and the fact that quantity at the mint is not the same thing as quantity surviving in exceptional condition. The 1981 D Quarter was struck at the United States Mint facility in Denver, Colorado, and the small D mint mark identifies that origin. Located on the obverse near Washington's hair ribbon, the letter is an essential part of identifying this specific issue. Denver produced approximately 575.7 million of these quarters for commerce, making the 1981 D a common date in terms of original production. America was entering a difficult economic period marked by high interest rates and inflationary pressures, and coins were being manufactured primarily to keep commerce moving rather than to create future rarities. These quarters entered banks, cash registers, vending machines, laundromats, parking meters, and countless pockets across the country. That everyday purpose is exactly why exceptional examples matter today. A coin intended for circulation usually acquires bag marks, scratches, dullness, fingerprints, and wear. The collectors who seek this issue are therefore not searching merely for a quarter with the correct date and mint mark. They are searching for survivors that somehow escaped the punishment of ordinary commerce. Like other regular-issue Washington quarters of its era, the 1981 D was made with a copper-nickel clad composition surrounding a pure copper core. The outer layers contain 75% copper and 25% nickel, while the overall structure gives the coin its familiar silvery appearance and a total weight of 5.67 grams. Its diameter measures 24.3 millimeters, and its edge is reeded. If an undamaged example is examined from the side, the copper core may sometimes be visible as a thin brownish line between the outer clad layers. This construction had become standard for circulating quarters after the United States abandoned the earlier 90% silver composition in the mid-1960s. The 1981 D Quarter, therefore, contains no standard silver content, and an ordinary example should not be valued as a precious metal coin. Its collector appeal comes instead from numismatic condition, scarcity at the highest grades, recognized varieties, and genuine mint errors. That distinction is important because a bright quarter is not automatically an uncirculated quarter, and an old quarter is not automatically a rare one. The design itself connects the 1981 D to one of the longest-running traditions in American coinage. The obverse features the left-facing portrait of George Washington created by sculptor John Flanagan, with liberty positioned above, in God We Trust to the left, and the date below. The Denver Mint mark appears on the obverse near the hair ribbon. On the reverse is the familiar eagle with wings spread, clutching arrows, with olive branches below and the inscriptions United States of America, EPLUBUSUNUM, and $quarter completing the design. By 1981, this imagery had become instantly recognizable to generations of Americans, yet collectors studying an individual coin look beyond the general design. They examine whether Washington's hair and facial details are sharply struck, whether the lettering is crisp, whether the eagle's breast and feathers show strong definition, and whether the high points display weakness caused by insufficient striking pressure or worn dies. A sharply struck example with attractive original luster is considerably more desirable than a coin of the same date that is technically uncirculated but poorly struck and heavily marked. This is where professional grading becomes especially important. A circulated 1981 D-quarter is generally common and often worth little more than its face value unless it has a significant error or unusual characteristic. Uncirculated examples are graded on the mint state scale, beginning at MS-60 and progressing through increasingly selective levels such as MS-63, MS-65, MS-66, MS-67, and beyond. The jump between these numbers is not cosmetic. At lower mint state levels, a coin may retain its original surfaces but show numerous contact marks from bags and handling. By MS-65, the piece should have noticeably stronger eye appeal and fewer serious distractions. At MS-67 or higher, collectors expect an unusually clean coin with attractive luster, strong overall preservation, and minimal marks in the most visible areas. For this issue, the highest quality coins become much harder to locate than the enormous mintage might suggest. Third-party certification from respected grading services can provide a standardized opinion on authenticity and condition, and certification populations also help collectors understand how frequently or infrequently a particular grade appears. A coin that is plentiful in average mint state may become genuinely challenging at the upper end of the grading scale. The auction record tells an important story about that condition rarity. PCGS records list a top auction result of $375 for a certified MS-67 example, while Great Collections has reported sales across a broad range, including an MS-67 Plus example that realized $1,687.50. Those figures demonstrate that serious premiums are possible, but they also demonstrate something equally important. The premium belongs to a particular certified coin with particular quality, not automatically to every 1981 D-quarter. A typical circulated example is nowhere near those levels, and even many ordinary uncirculated coins trade for comparatively modest amounts. Public pricing guides have also shown values in the low dollar range for many lower mint state grades, reinforcing the importance of not confusing a common date with a condition rarity. For a collector hopping to find a coin worth $1,200, $2,750, or even more, the date and the D mint mark alone are not enough. Such values would require an extraordinary combination of factors, perhaps an elite grade, remarkable eye appeal, an important authenticated variety, or a dramatic and verifiable mint error. The market rewards scarcity that can be demonstrated, not simply claimed. Mint errors and die varieties create another area of interest, although collectors must be careful not to mistake ordinary damage for a genuine mint-made anomaly. A legitimate error may result from a planchet problem, a struck-through object, a clipped planchet, an off-center strike, a brockage, or significant die-related issue. Certain double die characteristics may also attract attention when the doubling is genuine and attributable to the die itself, rather than to machine doubling or damage. A useful examination begins under magnification and good lighting. Look for unusual features that are raised as part of the original strike, consistent across affected design elements, and compatible with the way coins are actually manufactured. Random scratches, flattened lettering, post-mint dents, corrosion, and glue residue do not become valuable varieties merely because they look unusual. Authentication is particularly important when a coin appears dramatically different from normal examples. Counterfeit and altered coins also exist in the broader numismatic marketplace, and an apparent error can sometimes be the result of tampering. Weight, diameter, edge construction, surface texture, and the authenticity of the date and mint mark should all be considered. If the coin appears genuinely unusual and potentially valuable, professional evaluation is far safer than relying on photographs or assumptions alone. Preservation can determine whether a promising 1981 D-quarter remains collectible or loses much of its premium. Never polish the coin in an attempt to make it shine. Cleaning can leave hairline scratches, unnatural surfaces, and evidence of alteration that professional graders may identify. Hold an uncirculated coin by its edges, avoid touching the obverse and reverse fields, and store it in an inert holder designed for long-term numismatic preservation. A non-PVC flip, archival quality holder, capsule, or properly selected certified slab can help protect the surfaces from fingerprints and environmental contamination. Keep the coin away from moisture, excessive heat, household chemicals, and unstable materials. When examining several quarters, compare them carefully for luster, strike quality, marks, and unusual characteristics, because side-by-side comparison often reveals differences that are easy to miss when a single coin is viewed alone. The 1981 D. Washington Quarter is ultimately a lesson in disciplined collecting. A mintage of more than $500 million does not make every example valuable, but the passage of decades has reduced the number of coins that remain pristine, sharply struck, attractive, and professionally certified at elite levels. That is why an ordinary quarter may remain ordinary, while the right authenticated survivor can become a much more important piece of the Washington Quarter series. Next coin. Few American coins carry their historical purpose so openly as the 1976 Washington Bicentennial Quarter. Its unusual dual date immediately tells us that this was never meant to represent an ordinary year of coinage. It was created to commemorate 2 centuries of American independence, and for millions of people, it became a pocket-sized reminder of the nation's revolutionary beginning. Today, decades after these quarters first entered circulation, the coin has developed a powerful following among collectors, yet its value is often misunderstood. Vast numbers survive, and most are common, but certain examples stand far apart because of their composition, condition, strike, variety, era status, originality, and professional certification. Later in this story, we will examine what authenticated examples have actually brought at auction, and why 2 coins carrying the same 1976 date can have dramatically different collector appeal. The mystery begins with the fact that the Bicentennial Quarter was produced in extraordinary quantities, which makes the truly exceptional survivors all the more interesting. A coin made for the public on a massive scale eventually became a specialized field of collecting where the smallest manufacturing detail can separate an ordinary souvenir from a serious numismatic prize. The story began during preparations for the United States Bicentennial, the national celebration marking the 200th anniversary of American independence. Congress authorized special reverse designs for the quarter, $50 and dollar, allowing the nation's circulating coinage to participate in the celebration. Rather than placing a normal single-year date on these coins, the Mint adopted the dual date 1976. Production of the special quarters began before 1976 and continued into the bicentennial period, which is why the dual-dated coins are associated with the celebration rather than representing a conventional one-year mintage. The United States was experiencing a complicated decade economically. Inflation, energy concerns, and the effects of the 1970s economic slowdown were part of the national atmosphere, while preparations for the bicentennial created a rare moment of shared historical celebration. Parades, exhibitions, historical programs, commemorative products, and patriotic events appeared throughout the country. The quarter became one of the most widely distributed objects connected to that celebration. Unlike a medal locked away in a display case, this commemorative design traveled through everyday commerce. It passed from hand to hand in grocery stores, gas stations, banks, restaurants, vending machines, and countless other places, carrying a reminder of the revolution into the ordinary routines of modern American life. The design chosen for the reverse came from Jack L.R., whose winning artwork replaced the familiar eagle reverse for the bicentennial issue. It shows a colonial drummer facing left, accompanied by a victory torch surrounded by 13 stars representing the original colonies. The image deliberately reaches back to the Revolutionary era, connecting the quarter's modern production to the struggle for independence 2 centuries earlier. The reverse inscriptions retain the familiar national identity of the denomination while presenting a scene unlike any regular Washington Quarter issued before or after the bicentennial program. The obverse continued to feature John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington, preserving the traditional face of the quarter while pairing it with the special commemorative reverse. This combination was important symbolically. Washington represented the nation's founding generation, while the drummer suggested the ordinary citizens and soldiers whose participation helped create the United States. The dual date beneath Washington completed the historical message. For collectors, the design also provides numerous areas to inspect. The sharpness of Washington's portrait, the clarity of the lettering, the detail in the drummer, the definition of the torch, and the overall quality of the strike can all influence how attractive an individual coin appears. A weakly struck example may be technically uncirculated while still lacking the crispness and visual impact demanded by advanced collectors. Several distinct versions of the Bicentennial Quarter were produced, and identifying exactly which version you have is the first step toward understanding its collectability. Philadelphia struck copper-nickel clad business strikes without a mint mark, while Denver produced clad business strikes carrying a D mint mark. San Francisco struck special collector versions with an S mint mark, including silver-clad issues and proof coinage. The standard clad quarters have a composition of outer layers containing 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, producing a total weight of 5.67 grams. Their diameter is 24.3 millimeters, and their edges are reeded. The copper core can sometimes be visible as a reddish-brown band along the edge. The standard silver-clad bicentennial collector issues are different. They contain 40% silver overall, have a different weight of 5.75 grams, and were marketed specifically to collectors. This distinction matters enormously. A 1776-1976 quarter is not automatically silver simply because it is old or because it has a special design. The mint mark, edge appearance, weight, and original mint packaging can all provide clues, while professional authentication offers greater certainty for coins believed to have unusual compositions or significant value. The sheer scale of production also matters. Philadelphia struck more than 809 million clad business strike bicentennial quarters, while Denver produced more than 860 million, making ordinary examples extremely plentiful. That enormous production explains why collector value depends so heavily on survival quality. A circulated bicentennial quarter with obvious wear, scratches, stains, or damage is generally common. Millions of these coins were saved by the public, and many remained in jars, drawers, collections, and family keepsakes. But saving a coin is not the same as preserving it at a professional level. Coins stored loosely together can acquire contact marks. Improper cleaning can destroy their original surfaces. Moisture, fingerprints, PVC contamination, and environmental exposure can leave permanent evidence on the metal. As a result, the number originally produced tells only part of the story. The more difficult question is how many remain with outstanding luster, minimal abrasions, a strong strike, and exceptional eye appeal. Professional grading evaluates these characteristics using the mint state scale, with MS60 representing an uncirculated coin showing substantial marks and progressively higher grades reserved for increasingly well-preserved examples. At the upper levels, tiny differences become important. A distracting mark across Washington's cheek, a dull patch in the field, weak definition in the drummer, or impaired luster can prevent a coin from reaching a grade that advanced collectors consider elite. For clad coins, there is no traditional copper-style color classification such as red, red-brown, or brown. Instead, collectors focus more heavily on original luster, surface preservation, tunning, strike quality, and overall visual appeal. An unusually brilliant coin is not necessarily better if that brightness resulted from cleaning rather than natural preservation. This is also where varieties and genuine mint errors enter the picture. Collectors have identified double-die varieties among bicentennial quarters, including recognized varieties in which doubling was created during die manufacture rather than after the coin left the mint. Authentic variety attribution requires careful comparison with established diagnostics, because ordinary machine doubling, die deterioration, reflections in photographs, or post-mint damage can easily be mistaken for a valuable doubled die. Genuine mint errors may also command premiums when they are significant and professionally authenticated. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, major struck-through errors, wrong planchet errors, and other dramatic production mistakes can transform a common design into a much scarcer collectible, but each must be evaluated individually. Not every strange-looking quarter is an error. Damage from coin-counting machines, scratches, corrosion, chemical exposure, altered surfaces, or deliberate tampering can produce unusual appearances without creating numismatic rarity. This is why a collector should be especially cautious when encountering claims that a bicentennial quarter is valuable because of a vague doubling pattern, an odd color, or an apparent missing detail. The strongest candidates are those with characteristics consistent with known varieties or with the physical mechanics of the minting process. Weight and diameter should be checked when appropriate. The edge should be examined for signs of alteration, and unusual coins with potentially substantial value should be submitted to a respected third-party grading and authentication service. Once authentication and condition are established, the market can reveal why exceptional examples receive so much attention. Ordinary clad bicentennial quarters can be inexpensive even in uncirculated condition, but population rarity at the highest grades can create a completely different market. NGC's price guide, for example, lists the Philadelphia clad issue at substantially higher levels in elite mint state grades than in ordinary uncirculated grades, illustrating how the value curve changes when preservation becomes genuinely scarce. Auction records also show the importance of knowing exactly what was sold. NGC's auction database records a 1976 Philadelphia mint coin graded MS-60 that realized $2,880 in a 2023 Heritage Era coin auction. But that result should never be interpreted as the value of every bicentennial quarter. The auction context indicates that this was an era coin offering, and the premium reflected the specific certified piece rather than the ordinary date alone. Likewise, a collector might encounter an exceptional certified variety or error that brings around $1,425 or $3,250 under the right market conditions, while another coin with the same dual date might remain worth only a modest amount. The difference is created by verifiable rarity, certification, originality, grade, eye appeal, and competition among buyers. A dramatic price belongs to a particular coin with a particular story. Without the authentication and characteristics that created that story, the date alone does not reproduce the value. The silver issues add another layer of complexity and appeal because they were produced specifically for collectors and contain actual precious metal content. A silver-clad bicentennial quarter should be identified carefully, particularly when buying raw coins outside original mint packaging. The S mint mark is an important clue, but not every S bicentennial quarter has the same composition because San Francisco also struck copper-nickel-clad proof versions. Edge inspection and proper weight testing can help distinguish types, although professional certification remains the safest route when a coin appears valuable. Proof examples can display mirror-like fields and sharply defined devices, while cameo and deep cameo or ultra cameo designations may be awarded by grading services when the contrast between frosted design elements and reflective fields meets their standards. Such coins were manufactured differently from ordinary business strikes, using specially prepared dies and planchets and greater production care. Because the Bicentennial series includes circulating strikes, proofs, silver-clad collector issues, varieties, and eras, collectors compete not merely for one example, but for specific versions in the finest possible state of preservation. This variety of formats gives the series long-term collecting depth. A beginner can start with a simple circulated example, while an advanced registry set collector may pursue top population coins whose certified populations are far smaller than the original mintages suggest. Preserving a potentially valuable bicentennial quarter requires restraint. Never polish or scrub it to make it appear brighter, because cleaning can permanently alter the surface and reduce collector value. Hold raw coins by the edges, preferably over a soft surface in case they are dropped, and place important examples in inert, archival quality holders. Avoid PVC-containing flips, excessive humidity, household chemicals, adhesive materials, and uncontrolled temperature changes. Coins believed to be silver, unusual varieties, or mint errors should not be altered while attempting to investigate them. Photographs can be useful for comparison, but a photograph alone may not establish authenticity. The Bicentennial Quarter remains one of the most recognizable commemorative coins in American history precisely because it combines massive public familiarity with surprising complexity. More than a billion clad examples may have been produced across Philadelphia and Denver, yet collector competition continues for coins that stand above the ordinary population through exceptional preservation, unusual production characteristics, or special composition. Its long-term appeal is rooted in that balance between common history and uncommon quality. Nearly every American recognizes the drummer, but far fewer have examined what separates an ordinary example from a certified rarity. That is the enduring fascination of the 1976 Washington Quarter, a coin created for an entire nation, still common enough to discover, yet complex enough that the right authenticated example can command the attention of serious collectors. Last coin at first glance, a circulated 1965 Washington Quarter can look like one of the least exciting coins in American change. The surfaces may be dull, Washington's highest details may be softened by years of use, and the coin may have passed through countless hands without anyone giving it a second thought. Yet this ordinary-looking quarter sits at one of the most important turning points in modern United States coinage, and that historical moment is precisely why experienced collectors examine it more carefully than most people realize. The date 1965 marks the beginning of the copper-nickel-clad Washington Quarter, ending the long-running era in which regular United States quarters were made of 90% silver. For the serious numismatist, that makes this coin more than a worn piece of pocket change. It is evidence of a national monetary transition taking place during a coin shortage and a period of major economic pressure. As we examine this circulated quarter together, the important question is not simply whether it looks old or whether it has an unusual color. The real investigation begins with details that most people overlook. Later, we will discover why certain authenticated examples are far more desirable than ordinary pieces and why a small number of exceptional coins have achieved impressive results in the collector market. The first detail to notice is something that appears to be missing. There is no mint mark. On a 1965 Washington Quarter, that absence is historically significant. During the mid-1960s coin shortage, the Treasury temporarily suspended mint marks on circulating coins in an effort to discourage collectors from pulling new issues out of circulation and contributing to shortages. Production of regular 1965 quarters involved both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, but the coins did not identify their facility of manufacture with a P or D. PCGS reports a combined mintage of 1,819,717,540 regular strike quarters, an enormous number that immediately explains why the typical circulated example is not rare. Production of the 1965 dated quarter began in August 1965 and continued into 1966 as the mint worked to satisfy demand for coins. The San Francisco assay office also produced approximately 2.36 million mint-mark-free quarters for the 1965 Special Mint Set program, creating another category that collectors must distinguish from ordinary circulation strikes. This unusual system means that simply finding a 1965 quarter without a mint mark proves nothing unusual. It is exactly how the regular issue was supposed to look. A genuine D or S added to an ordinary 1965 quarter would therefore be a reason for suspicion, not excitement. Experienced collectors first confirm the date, then recognize the normal absence of a mint mark, and only after that move on to the more difficult questions involving the coin's composition, strike, surfaces, and possible varieties. The reason the composition matters so much takes us directly into the economic climate of 1965. By the early 1960s, the rising value of silver had created a serious problem for American coinage. The metal inside a silver quarter was becoming increasingly valuable relative to the coin's face value, encouraging the withdrawal and hoarding of silver coins while the country struggled with an intense shortage of small change. The Coinage Act of 1965 introduced a new era for the dime and quarter. A sandwich-like copper-nickel-clad structure replaced the old 90% silver composition used for regular quarters. A normal 1965 quarter has outer layers made of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a core of pure copper. It weighs 5.67 grams, measures 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and has a reeded edge. When we turn a circulated example sideways, that edge becomes one of the first places to inspect. On an ordinary clad quarter, the copper core may appear as a reddish or brownish band between the outer nickel-colored layers. This is very different from a genuine silver quarter, whose edge should not display the same exposed copper center. The 1965 issue, therefore, became the first regular Washington quarter of a new metallic age, and that transition created unusual possibilities for collectors because leftover silver planchets and new clad planchets existed during the same period. Still, a coin should never be declared a rare silver error merely because it looks bright. Weight, edge appearance, physical measurements, and professional authentication are far more reliable than guesswork. The design of the circulated 1965 quarter preserved the familiar appearance Americans had known for decades. The obverse features George Washington facing left, with liberty above his portrait, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the date 1965 below. The reverse displays the heraldic eagle with wings extended, a bundle of arrows beneath its body, and olive branches below, combining symbols of military preparedness and peace. United States of America, EPLUBUSUNUM, and quarter dollar surround the reverse design. The coin was designed by sculptor John Flanagan, whose Washington portrait had appeared on the quarter since 1932. For a circulated example, this artwork gives us a map of where wear should naturally occur. The highest points of Washington's hair, cheek, and neck tend to lose detail first. On the reverse, the eagle's breast, legs, wing details, and other raised areas can become softened after years of movement through commerce. Natural circulation wear is usually gradual and consistent across the design. That is why experienced collectors look closely for unusual patterns. A coin that shows obvious flatness on the high points is circulated. A coin that retains full detail but has only contact marks may be uncirculated. Scratches cutting through the design, deep gouges, corrosion, discoloration, or unnatural brightness may indicate post-mint damage rather than normal use. The investigation is not about finding a coin that looks perfect. In the case of a circulated 1965 quarter, the goal is to understand exactly how the coin acquired its present appearance and whether anything beneath that wear separates it from the billions of ordinary examples. Once the basic identity is established, grading becomes the next part of the investigation. A circulated coin is evaluated according to the amount of wear, the sharpness of its remaining details, and the overall condition of the surfaces. Grades can range from heavily worn levels such as good and very good through fine, very fine, extremely fine, and about uncirculated, depending on how much original detail survives. A circulated 1965 quarter normally does not retain the blazing mint luster associated with a freshly struck coin, although an about uncirculated example may preserve traces of original luster in protected areas around the letters and design. For copper-nickel-clad Washington quarters, collectors do not use the classic red, red-brown, and brown color designations associated with copper cents. Instead, they judge originality, luster, tunning, surface preservation, and eye appeal. Natural tunning can sometimes be attractive, while blotchy corrosion or artificial color can be a serious problem. The transition from circulated to mint state is particularly important because the value of a normal 1965 quarter can change dramatically when exceptional preservation enters the picture. PCGS records ordinary high-grade examples and recognizes an auction record of $12,650 for an exceptional gem brilliant uncirculated coin, while another PCGS recorded MS-68 example realized $11,400 at a 2023 Heritage auction. Those extraordinary results belong to certified, elite condition coins and should never be interpreted as the value of a typical circulated quarter. In fact, an ordinary certified MS-66 example has sold for only tens of dollars, illustrating how sharply value can change with grade, rarity, and eye appeal. The investigation becomes more interesting when we begin looking for recognized die varieties. PCGS lists two important double die obverse varieties for the regular 1965 quarter, FS101 and FS102, as well as a double die reverse variety, FS801. These are not random cases of blurry lettering. A genuine double die originates during the production of the die itself, meaning the abnormal doubling becomes part of the design transferred to every coin struck by that particular die. Depending on the variety, collectors may examine the date, liberty, in God we trust, or elements of the reverse for established diagnostics. This is where magnification and patience become essential. Machine doubling can create a flat, shelf-like appearance and is not the same thing as a recognized double die. Wear can also distort lettering, while damage from circulation can imitate unusual features. The strongest candidate is one that matches published diagnostics for a recognized variety. A genuine FS102, for example, has achieved a verified auction result of $1,650 for a PCGS-recognized MS-65 example sold by Great Collections. That does not mean every circulated quarter showing what appears to be doubling is worth anywhere near that amount. A circulated and uncertified piece might be damaged, machine doubled, or simply a different die state altogether. But if a coin shows convincing variety diagnostics, professional attribution can completely change the nature of the investigation, because the collector is no longer dealing with a common date alone, but with a specific and recognized variety. Mint errors deserve an equally careful approach, especially because 1965 was a transitional year. Genuine errors can include coins struck on an incorrect planchet, off-center pieces, clipped planchets, major struck-through errors, missing clad layer pieces, or other abnormalities created during the manufacturing process. The most historically dramatic possibilities involve the transition away from silver. A genuine 1965 quarter struck on a left of a 90% silver planchet would be fundamentally different from the standard clad issue, but such a claim requires strong evidence. A normal clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams, while a standard pre-1965 silver Washington quarter weighs about 6.25 grams. A precise scale, proper physical examination, and professional authentication are therefore critical. Surface color alone cannot establish silver content. Plating, polishing, dirt, chemical damage, or altered surfaces can fool the eye. Counterfeit awareness also matters. Collectors should watch for altered coins, artificially added or removed features, deceptive plating, counterfeit error pieces, and novelty items that have been modified outside the mint. The safest procedure for a suspiciously valuable coin is to avoid cleaning it, avoid testing it with chemicals, photograph both sides and the edge, record its exact weight, and seek an opinion from a respected professional grading service or knowledgeable specialist. If an authenticated error has genuine rarity and strong eye appeal, it may enter a value category far above the normal market. Depending on the specific certified error, condition, and demand, examples can reach into the thousands, but that premium belongs to the documented error itself, not to an ordinary quarter simply because it shares the date 1965 for a circulated 1965 quarter. The most valuable skill may actually be knowing what not to do. Do not polish the coin to make it shine. Do not rub the surfaces with cloth, toothpaste, baking soda, or abrasive compounds. Do not soak a potentially valuable error in chemicals before documenting it. Cleaning can leave microscopic hairlines and permanently alter the original surface, often reducing collector interest even when the coin remains authentic. Handle a raw coin by its edges and store it in an inert, archival quality holder, such as a suitable non-PVC flip, capsule, or other numismatic storage product. Keep it away from moisture, adhesives, household chemicals, and extreme environmental conditions. If the quarter is heavily circulated but appears normal, preservation may simply mean protecting it as a historical example of the first year of clad Washington Quarters. If it shows strong doubling, an unusual edge, an abnormal weight, or a dramatic striking error, preservation becomes even more important because the physical evidence itself may determine whether authentication is possible. The 1965 Washington Quarter remains historically important not because every surviving example is rare, but because it represents the moment when the familiar silver quarter disappeared from regular production and modern clad coinage took its place. Billions were made, most circulated extensively, and most remain ordinary. Yet among that enormous population, condition rarities, recognized double dies, special mint set issues, and authenticated mint errors continue to give collectors reasons to look twice. That is why this seemingly ordinary circulated quarter still rewards careful observation. Its true significance is not hidden in a fantasy price attached to every coin, but in the details that reveal exactly which coin is sitting in your hand.